Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. We resume the reading of Lord Meher, the biography of the Avatar of the Age Meher Baba, Volume 1 by Bhau Kalchuri. We are on page 15, where there's a picture of Narayan Maharaj dressed in regal fashion, wearing gold embroidered fez, blue velvet jacket, and vest with gold embroidery, silken shirt, dhoti, and sandals at Kedgaon in 1936. In Hinduism, there is a traditional confirmation ceremony of the sacred thread. Narayan's confirmation was celebrated before a large number of guests. The young boy was handsome, with refined features, and his spiritual inclination of mind deeply impressed the villagers. Every person was drawn to his gentle beauty, instinctively loving him, and it seemed as if the song of wine was already singing in the child's heart. Although just a little boy, Narayan's spiritual calling was making him restless, and he found his grandmother's strict home confining. Once, while he was eating his meal, he asked for a more clarified butter ghee. His grandmother, instead of giving it, scolded him. After this incident in 1894, fed up and no longer caring for his home and relatives, Narayan disappeared. At this time, he was only 9 years old when he renounced the world. Even though he was at a tender age to achieve the spiritual renunciation, he who has the song in his heart has no age. Age is of no importance. The longing and ardor for God makes one go mad, and in his divine madness, to play with tigers, climb mountains, walk on fire, pass through the worst calamities becomes possible. For 6 or 7 years, Narayan's whereabouts were unrecorded, but it is rumored that at this time he traveled between Nargun and Pune as a sadhu, a renunciant. In the course of his wanderings, Narayan no doubt had to face many terrible hardships, which he cleared his way to the goal. Driven by surge, Narayan came to Saudati village. Nearby is a mountain, Yelama, where a yogi named Jamdagni Rishi had done penance. To the mountains Yelama temple, Narayan ventured, where he took darshan of the mountain deity and decided to stay for the night. While on his way to bathe in the river near the temple, his gaze fell upon an old woman, a tapaswini, female ascetic. The tapaswini beckoned Narayan to her and asked, "Child, you are so young and small. How is that you've come here all alone? Who and where are your parents? Tell me your story." The child sadhu sat down next to her and began, "My name is Narayan. My father's name is Sri Datta Maharaj, God. He's my sole support, and only he looks after me. After my daily morning and evening bath, I repeat his name. This is my entire story." Hearing this, the old woman ascetic was astonished and said, "Although you are quite young and quite small, your devotion would put men to shame. To become helpless in life is to gain strength. Only the helpless attain godhood." With these words, the old woman left him. Narayan then bathed in the river and took darshan of Renuka, another deity there. He remained at Yelama for a few days and then continued on foot to Gurlhosur on the banks of Malprabha river, where he stayed in an ancient temple with Vithoba, Lord Krishna, for 5 days. At Gurlhosur, on one occasion, Narayan felt terrible pangs of hunger and went to a Brahmin's house to beg for food. The Brahmin was furious and retorted, "Is it your father's house? Get out of here, you little scamp, or I'll beat you." Narayan was taken aback, and his hunger temporarily disappeared. He returned to the temple, where he began shouting for Vithoba, "Krishna, Krishna." Tears rolled down his pale cheeks, and he lapsed into semi-consciousness. Later in the evening, an old woman entered the temple bringing food. After offering it to Vithoba's statue, she placed the food before Narayan, but he declared, "I did not ask you for this food, I asked Vithoba." The woman gently replied, "But child, this is Vithoba's and it's Lord's prasad, and you may partake of it." So Narayan ate the food and thanked Vithoba for answering his call. How can he who is God's not be protected? Even a tiger approaches him like a lamb. Narayan abandoned the city of Gurlosur to move onto a thick jungle where he stayed in a temple dedicated to Shiva, the greatest of yogis. The temple had been deserted and he was all alone. One night, a tiger roaring from hunger entered the temple. But Narayan was unafraid as the tiger cautiously crept close to his body. The beast merely sniffed Narayan's feet and then disappeared into the jungle. Narayan laughed as it seemed the tiger had come to lay his head on his feet and left after receiving his blessings. After staying in Shiva temple for some time, Narayan resumed his wanderings. During this period, he would often go without food for as long as 2 weeks, but he kept walking in the heat, rain, or cold, not knowing where his search would lead. There was a song in the heart, and in that blissful state, he was forgetting everything. He would proceed where the song took him, and however severe the privations, they were nothing compared to what he was experiencing inwardly. After traveling for days in barren region, at one point Narayan's throat became so parched that he felt as if he were breathing his last. There was no water to be found, and completely exhausted, unable to walk further, he collapsed beneath a tree to await death. Suddenly a horseman appeared who pointed to a certain tree and told the startled boy, "A brook is near that tree." Then the horseman vanished, and when Narayan walked in the direction indicated, to his amazement, he found a small stream. From this divine help, Narayan felt confident that God's sight was truly on him. Narayan moved to Kundgol village, where he stayed for 4 months at the house of a rich man named Nalgode, who owned vast estates. The childless landowner and his wife were greatly drawn towards the young sadhu and looked after him with much love. After a few months, they offered to adopt him and make him their heir, but Narayan refused and soon after left Kundgol for Belgaum. Traveling to Pune from Belgaum in 1901 or 1902, Narayan stayed in the temple of Hanuman near Ravivar Gate. He was then 15 or 16 years old. In Pune, he encountered serious trouble when a shopkeeper accused him of stealing money. Narayan escaped from Pune and went to Kopargaon, where he stayed in another temple dedicated to Hindu god Bahiroba. People began to be drawn to him, and he would lead the bhajan singing. Time passed pleasantly, and the echo of song in his heart had its effect upon anyone who came to his physical contact. A man named Vadkoba would daily come to be with Narayan, and love for his young sadhu captured his heart. Vadkoba was awestruck at the divine qualities he detected in this youth. After some time, Narayan moved from Bhairova's temple to the home of another businessman named Rupchand, who had devotedly made arrangements for Narayan's comfort. One day, Narayan visited Vadkoba's house, where he met Trimbak Rao, who was from Kopargaon but resided in Arvi. When Vadkoba introduced Trimbak, he was immediately attracted to Narayan, and he inquired if he would accompany him to Arvi. Narayan agreed, and the elated Trimbak and young sadhu departed. Trimbak Rao and his wife Lakshmi had no children, and with true devotion they worshipped the Hindu god Mudraleshwar in hope of being blessed with a son. While Trembak was on his way to Arvi with Narayan, Lakshmi had a dream. In it, a voice told her, "The youth who is coming to your house is a great saint. Look after him well and treat him as your own son." Within an hour of the dream, her husband and the youth reached home, and Lakshmi welcomed Narayan with great reverence. On another occasion, when Lakshmi was worshipping in the Mudraleshwar temple, Narayan appeared to her in a vision and said, "I am your son. There is no more need to pray for one." In this way, Lakshmi's prayers were fulfilled and Narayan ceased to be an orphan. Lakshmi served Narayan with great devotion, and he treated her graciously in return, as if she were, in fact, his mother. Days passed, then months peacefully and in contentment, but the arrow of the song was starting to pierce Narayan's heart again. No one except him knew of its pain. The song was making him restless again, urging him somewhere else, and Narayan was longing to seek its source. Narayan heard the song within intensely and knew the inspiration was to journey to Gangapur, a place sacred to the devotees of Dattatreya. It was no longer possible for him to remain with his adopted family in Arvi while he was struggling inwardly in the storm of restlessness. He earnestly began preparing to set off for Gangapur, but Lakshmi's tears at the thought of his departure halted him. During his 6-month stay at their home, Narayan had become the son that Trembak and Lakshmi had never begotten, and it was impossible for the mother to let her adopted son leave. Narayan was now 17. Although young, he was merging into the spiritual consciousness of a true master, and the moment of uniting with his Lord Dattatreya was near. The moment of union could not be postponed, so he allowed Lakshmi to accompany him when he left for Gangapur. On the journey, however, the woman fell ill with fever, and as Narayan could not abandon her, he accompanied her back to Arvi, frustrated at the turn of events. After Lakshmi recovered, this time her tears could not stop. Narayan, when he resumed his journey to Gangapur, Narayan was overjoyed to finally be in the holy city. He remained under a neem tree near the confluence of two rivers, where he gradually became must-like or God-intoxicated, though his spiritual experiences of overwhelming bliss. Through his spiritual experiences of overwhelming bliss. Now more of a must than a devotee sadhu, the youth appeared mad, and it seemed as if all his saintly qualities too had been burned away. Unconscious of hunger or thirst, a divine fire was consuming him. If he ate at all, it was while roaming through the streets begging, and he would consume the food as if possessed. Even when the river flooded due to the rains, Narayan would climb the neem tree and remain unaffected, sitting on the branch absorbed in his spiritual enchantment. Eventually, Narayan was drawn to climb a nearby mountain and live in a cave, and in this cave he did not eat or drink, but burned in a divine fire. In this fire of love, he experienced both joy and pain simultaneously. The pain of his longing was now so intense that it maintained his link with the physical body, while at the same time his spiritual joy surged to be free of it. The suffering overcame him, and he cried out in the cave, "Alas, my beloved, why don't you meet me? Why have you turned away from me? Why don't you turn and show me your glorious face?" Narayan had visions, crying with pain. Narayan was inwardly merging with a great sea of fire. Although being tortured by this all-consuming fire of longing, Narayan longed to burn more, for strangely, without this pain, there was no bliss for him. Quite emaciated, Narayan abandoned the cave and wandered along with the mountain cliffs. After some days, he was dazed, sitting alongside the monastery situated in the mountains, absorbed in his inner state, when a voice aroused him out of his trance. The voice was clearly calling him, and he entered the chambers of monastery where, at the end of a passageway, he saw an old man. When Narayan went up to meet him, he bowed suddenly. The old man's gaze turned into his sea of restlessness into a sea of bliss. Narayan fell at his feet, recognizing the old man as the master he had seen in his dreams. The disquiet he had experienced for nearly 10 years melted away into peace at the sight of his guru.
The old man embraced the youth, then told Narayan, "I'm hungry. Go beg and bring me some food." When Narayan returned with the food, he found the monastery's door locked. Shocked, he started shouting for his master. Hearing his cries, the caretaker of the monastery appeared and told him, "No one has been here all day." His words indicated that the master had appeared only for Narayan. When the door was unlatched at Narayan's instance, there was no one inside. Narayan was bewildered, and he sat outside the monastery under a neem tree, silently calling upon his guru to come and partake of the food. The youth was overcome with tears, and the terrible restlessness that had left him reappeared with a fresh tenacity. "Master, where are you? Why have you hidden? Allow me to see your face again. I have brought food for you, as instructed. I will not eat until you come and take it. Come, master, come soon, or I'll die without you." For 3 days, Narayan wept bitterly. The deep pang of separation was killing him, when suddenly he saw his guru standing before him. The old man sat down alongside the youth and accepted the food. The guru then gave the remaining food to Narayan, telling him, "Finish it, this is my prasad to you." As soon as Narayana swallowed the first morsel of the food, the appearance of the old man completely changed. He found that the old man was none other than Dattatreya. The old man's body had transformed into a young man's with 6 arms and 3 heads. With this appearance of Dattatreya, Narayan himself transformed into Narayan, the universal one. The youth became God-realized, crossing the limits of duality. But young Narayan, with attainment of divine consciousness, lost his individual consciousness and had no link with the world or his physical body. Gradually, however, after some period of time, the Dattatreya's grace enabled the youth to regain consciousness of his body and the atmosphere around him. During this phase of coming down from the God state, Narayan's health had completely broken down, but upon regaining this gross consciousness, he also regained his health with his perfected consciousness, and his 18-year-old body revived, strong and vibrant. The young Sadguru left the mountain and river of Gangapur, returning to his spiritual parents, Trimbak Rao and Lakshmi in Arvi, to their great pleasure. The community of Arvi soon recognized the youth's attainment of the highest spiritual state of God consciousness with creation consciousness, Sahaj Samadhi, and began worshipping the boy, who was openly acknowledged as a Sadguru for his blessing. Narayan's physical presence was then as a child. He was small and fair, approximately 4 feet 6 inches tall, and talked with a high-pitched voice. Children adored him, laughing and jumping about. He would happily play with them. Thus, for some time, Narayan blessed the soil of Arvi with his love. People were grateful for the rare fortune of having their town as the residence of a living Sadguru. After a while, Narayan was not satisfied with Arvi as his headquarters. 34 miles from Pune, the young Guru and Maharaj selected a small farming village named Kadegaon as his main center of activity. In 1903, he began staying nearby the village in Old Kadegaon, Bet, a small island. 9 years passed. He wished to purchase land there, but since the farmers refused to sell any in 1912, he moved his headquarters a few miles away to Net Bet and purchased land there for his permanent ashram. Narayan's chief female disciple, named Anjani Bhai Malpekar, was a former courtesan in Bombay who knew many prominent social and political figures. The woman had become wealthy in her profession and she had an exquisite singing voice, and it was through her voice that she would arouse the passion of her rich patrons. By a jealous enemy, she was deceived into eating some pan leaf dosed with poison, and although she did not die, she lost the sweetness of her voice. For months she tried to seek a medical cure, but to no avail. Finally, she started consulting yogis and gurus, but they too could not cure her. One guru suggested she visit a sadhu who used to sit alongside the road. He was Narayan. The woman approached him and pleaded, I have been told you have the power to restore my voice. Why should I? The guru replied. So I can sing again, she responded. So you can sing again? Ah, to whom will you sing? If I restore your voice, will you sing to me? Replied Narayan. She replied, Of course, I will do whatever you wish. Well, go ahead and sing to me. And with these words, the woman began to sing. Much to her own amazement, after this occurrence, Anjali Bai left her disreputable profession and turned all her wealth over to serving Narayan's needs. He thus acted like a rich Maharaja, leaving behind his sadhu nakedness. At his ashram in Kadegaon, Narayan had built a beautiful temple consecrated to Dattatreya, in which he would perform daily in Hindu fashion puja worship. It is said that the god Dattatreya would appear physically every day in the temple when Narayan worshipped. The young Sadguru fame spread. More and more people came for his spiritual guidance and blessings, and this once remote barren land of Kadegaon was gradually inhabited as Narayan Maharaj's followers increased. A perfect master's ways are unique, and it is truly beyond normal intellectual understanding to grasp this significance. In accordance with Hindu rites, Narayan Maharaj would worship Lord Dattatreya and impress upon his disciple to do the same. Every day, early in the morning, he himself would take darshan of the marble statue of Dattatreya in the temple, which is said to have come alive, and then he would give darshan to his followers. Narayan himself would lead the procession in honor of Dattatreya every Thursday and sing melodious bhajans to the gathering. Narayan Maharaj would also sometimes worship Shiva, the first soul, the greatest of yogis, or the Vedic Shiva Lingam, and often wore the mark of Shiva. Worship was a great part of this perfect master's work. It is said that he once congregated 6,000 Hindu priests and led them to a tremendous ceremony. Occasionally, Narayan would become like a child and play games with his devotees. Later, as their master, explaining to them the spiritual mysteries underlying these games. Eventually, a small but elaborate palace was built for Narayan, where he lived and gave mass darshan in the hall. In the rear of the palace was his lounge, bedroom, and kitchen. In 1926, he had an underground cellar built alongside the palace where he would retire into seclusion to do his universal work. Narayan Maharaj's fame also spread far beyond because of the newspaper article that appeared in the Times of India written by a professor A.G. Woodhouse of Deccan College in Pune. Professor Woodhouse had been traveling in the arid region of Kardigaon and was suffering thirst from the extreme heat. He encountered Narayan along a road, who miraculously produced water from his empty hands for Woodhouse to quench his thirst. Afterwards, Woodhouse had several meetings with Narayan to discuss the various aspects of Indian spirituality and mysticism, Vedanta. Professor Woodhouse's intellectual and educational influence brought great recognition of Narayan to the general public. In his universal work, A Perfect Master has no regular occupation or daily routine. A perfect master's work is to emancipate others from their worldly bondage and the various mediums he employs and manner in which he works can be called his occupation. A perfect master is God in human form, an individual who has become God, and he is absolutely beyond all normal bonds. His every activity is outside the scope of one's human limited vision. Narayan Maharaj literally means God the King, was a Jamali type master. He was gentle, kind, childlike, and seldom abusive. His disciples claimed that his physical appearance did not change. For nearly 30 years, he had perennial youth. Although extremely short in stature, his lean body had beautiful definition and subtlety like a yogi's. His spiritual routine was that of Raja Yoga. His close disciples knew that his spiritual lineage was connected to Dhaneshwar, the youngest of Sadgurus, who centuries before lived in Alandi, a village outside Pune in same district of Maharashtra. Narayan had displayed in his palace a large painting of a young Dhaneshwar meeting the old great yogi Changdeva. Narayan, once the naked Raja yogi who had suffered terrible penance and ascetic denial centuries ago, was now regally attired in silk and velvet clothes with gold embroidery and diamond buttons. He who once lived in caves now lived in stunning palace. It is rumored that his circle of 12 men were all Maharajas in India. Although he dressed like a rich Maharaja himself, having the best tailors from Bombay and even buying a new automobile every year, he was spiritually perfect. A king who outsaw the three worlds, Triloka, the mental, subtle, and gross spheres. Narayan would hold darshan in his palace upon different thrones ornamented exquisitely. One throne carved from with the image of Dattatreya was planted with silver and was very large, nearly 10 feet high, and within this throne was a beautifully carved chair, also silver plated. On one occasion, Zoroastrian devotee, whom Narayan called son, asked Narayan, "You call me your son, then you don't why don't you give me some of those jewels you wear, so I may appear as regal as you?" Suddenly, Narayan's mood was upset, and he looked with scorn and disgust upon the man, saying, "Never desire these things. These rings and jewels are filth." In April 1915, when Narayan was holding darshan, suddenly a stream of light shone through the crowd, and a ragged young man appeared before him, divine wine pouring from his eyes. The young man was dazed. It was Zoroastrian youth from Pune, whom Babajan had kissed. Narayan immediately dispersed the crowd and came down from his seat. Gently taking him in by the hand, he led the young man to his seat and taking a garland from his own neck, placed it around the young man's neck. He then gave the young man fresh mango juice to drink. After finishing the juice, the young man arose from his seat, bowed to Narayan, and disappeared out of the door. Narayan kept gazing at the youth until he was out of sight, and he seemed extremely pleased. For the remainder of that day, there was no more darshan allowed, and his devotees wondered who that young man must have been seated in their master's place. Narayan Maharaj would often travel to Pune and Bombay and to other parts of India, often accompanied by the children of his devotees. In 1934, he was the guest of Maharaja of Mysore and went on to Indore, where he was taken in the Maharaja's own carriage, leading a parade. In 1935, he journeyed north to the Himalayas for his work. It is said that the king of Nepal gave him a throne. He also journeyed to Benares, where he bathed many devotees and children in the Ganges River. In India, the darshan or blessings of saints and gurus is a frequent occurrence. People heard that Narayan had performed several miracles in Karigaon, and they were drawn to seek his touch. But the miracles were his play. Narayan Maharaj was the owner of the wine shop of God's love, and through the medium of these miracles, people came from far and wide for his blessings. The miracles were the shadows of Narayan's real work, to allow people to the opportunity to taste the wine of divine love that lived in his body. There is no real prasad other than this wine, and Narayan distributed to all who longed only for God's love. Life is meant to imbibe this wine, and after drinking it, when life ceases to be life, external existence is born. This is the highest of all spiritual gifts, and only a perfect master can fill one's heart and this prasad. In August 1945, Narayan Maharaj left Karigaon and travelled south to Bangalore. There, within the rampart around a deserted fort, preparations were made to perform different types of yagnas, ceremonies of burning sacrificial fires of sandalwood and oils. The religious ceremonies lasted for 3 weeks, and hundreds of devotees from different parts of India came for the holy celebration. Thousands were fed each day on the festival grounds. Narayan was leading this festival, and with his own hands he distributed dakshina, prasad, in the form of money. This prasad was given to hundreds of destitute people. No one knew at that time that Narayan was consummating his universal work as he radiated indescribable bliss. The wine of his love was at its zenith, and his devotees and pilgrims appeared to be going mad from the intoxicating effects of the atmosphere he created. But on the joyful completion of the yagnas, everyone's smile of wine turned into tears, for on September 3rd, 1945, Sadguru Narayan Maharaj dropped his physical body. Tears flowed throughout the city of Bangalore, but these tears contained the wine Narayan had given, which unveiled his real form. The Sadguru's body was cremated in Bangalore. Half of his ashes were taken to his ashram in Karigaon to be enshrined in the palace hall, and the rest were taken to Benares to be absorbed by the water of the Ganges. O Narayan Maharaj, our repeated salutations to you. You garlanded the Ancient One with your grace. End of chapter and end of page number 32. We will continue reading with Baba's grace tomorrow. Baba mein charan chhod na jaऊं, दाता मैं चरण छोड़ न जाऊं, जहाँ में तुमको सुख लागत है, जहाँ में तुमको सुख लागत है, वहाँ बिन कछु नहीं चाहो, बाबा मैं चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं, तुम जैसे राखो वैसे रहूं मैं, तुम जैसे राखो वैसे रहूं मैं, तुम बिन नाही चाहूं कछु मैं,
वारी वारी जाऊं, बाबा मैं चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं, दाता मैं चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं, मेहर में चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं। अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय, अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय, अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय।